Hi, good morning. Mga katribu, welcome to another episode of Daily Tribune Straight Talk, where we discuss important topics that matter most to each of us. This is Chito Lozada, your solo host for the moment, because of some adjustments in the format. We are live on Daily Tribune's Facebook page and Tribune Now on YouTube. Our guest this morning's episode is RCBC's Chief Economist, Mr. Michael Ricafort. Hi, Mike. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Mr. Chito, and sa inyong mga taga-subaybay po, sa Tribune po.
Yeah. Yung so let's get on with it. Ang yung inflation figures came up to 3.8%. But the biggest contributor to it is still the rice prices, something like 24%. So when you take out the price of grain prices, the figure is quite mild. So how do you see it, sir, Mr. Ricaport?
Yun po, Mr. Chito, standout talaga yung price. No? It went
Oo nga,
up by 23.9% year on year
year on
in
year.
April. Compared to a year ago, almost one-fourth yung tinaas ng presyo ng bigas.
Correct.
Though in March, it was 24.4%. Pero hawig pa rin. It's still similar. Kaya gawa nga po yan ng
El
drought.
Nino.
Kasi in the country and also similar din naman yan sa neighboring countries natin sa ASEAN. Asia. Kasi yung heat wave, di lang naman ho dito, pati rin sa neighboring countries, they also feel it. No? And as a result, yung world and Asian rice price went up to 15-year highs. No? Although, we already saw this a similar episode August of last year. No? There was also a drought in other ASEAN and Asian countries, especially the rice-producing countries from which the country imports. No? Kaya bumalik lang naman doon sa 15-year highs na yon. Kasi fundamentally, mapa local, whether here locally or other ASEAN countries, whenever there's lack of rainfall due to the El Nino drought, and that reduces the output or the production of rice, and
Correct,
therefore
yes.
less supplies and inventories. Given the demand supply balance, there's a tendency for rice prices to go up as a result. And it's not just rice. It may also include other agricultural products that may have suffered in terms of reduced output or production due to the lack of rainfall. Because El Nino started around the fourth quarter of last year and expected to last until the second quarter of this year. So that's until around June, and there will be a transition eventually towards the rainy or the wet season. And later this year, there's another challenge also on agriculture because the Weather Bureau is expecting
La Nina naman.
risk of La Nina. So why is La Nina? Well, during the typhoon season, yeah, there's a risk kasi that's the experience of our countrymen, our fellow Filipinos, rather. Those, especially those in the typhoon hit area, whenever there's storm damage brought about by the typhoons during the rainy season, especially if there are strong winds that destroy crops and other agricultural products, as well as floods, no? That's a feature of La Nina. There will be excessive rainfall naman, no? From lack of rainfall, it will transition to excessive, well, unusually higher rainfall in the latter part of the year. So whenever there are floods, that would also inundate some of the farmlands. Would also create damage to agriculture, and that would also reduce prices. And based on our experience, the country's experience in recent years and decades, during the typhoon season, the storm season,
Correct.
combined with either floods and or strong winds that destroy the crops, no, and other agricultural production, with effectively reducing the output or production and tendency, well, even for vegetables, prices do go up. That's a tendency if supplies are reduced due to the storm damage. We always experience that whenever there are typhoons. No? That's why some areas, when they declare state of calamity, so that's the thing that enabled to control prices. Well, the state of calamity is also well declared to to prevent undue profiteering or undue increase
Yes.
in the prices
Oh.
of basic commodities in the typhoon hit area. So that's a risk going forward. No?
Yes.
That's our no. Yeah, that's also acknowledged by our local authorities, no, to prepare for. And the latest data, interestingly, we saw a food prices, some slight decline in food prices. Surprisingly,
In the
maybe
other
this had to do
commodities. Oh.
on the whole, no? Kasi we starting late last year, the country was only visited by about half of the usual number of typhoons. That's why during the typhoon season last, that didn't create damage to agriculture, not that much, no? And relatively better weather conditions enabled.
There was even a
Well,
glut in some commodities, agricultural commodities.
yeah, especially those that are not sensitive to rainfall.
Oh.
That supported increased production, but not all, because the first quarter data that came out, just came out this morning for agriculture, we saw some slowdown in practically many areas in the agricultural sector. You know, either contraction or slower growth compared to a year ago, but that's still as of first quarter. So that's one. El Nino is number one for the El Nino drought, especially if this one persists. No? And the risk here is a severe form of El Nino, similar to the last one that we saw severe El Nino was in the late 1990s. That's why the challenge here is rice prices. Kasi if you look at the components of inflation, that's the only standout. Other commodity pricing is
there was even reductions.
The closest ones are just like less than 5% year-on-year growth. It's already manageable on some other commodities. But in reality, whenever Filipinos go out, pamili sila, they go to the palengkes, the supermarket, the grocery, the reality is still there. Higher prices remain. So, it slowed down a bit, yes. It's picking up, but it's still relatively slow. That's still among the slowest in 2 years at 3.8%. Compared to the previous month's 3.7%. And a year ago, it was 6.6%. So, that is still within the central bank's target. Kasi the target of the central bank is 2 to 4%. So, it's still within the target for the fifth straight month already. Meaning to say, why is that important? That's the objective of the central banks around the world, not only here but also in the U.S. to bring down and better manage inflation to more sustainable levels, not that fast. In our case, 2 to 4%. In the U.S., 2%. That's their inflation target. So, so at least it's still within the inflation target. What's the implication of that? That will still justify eventually if the time comes already for the U.S. Central Bank, the Federal Reserve, to cut interest rates. So it is justified to also correspondingly cut local interest rates to match what the Fed does due to the interest differentials. So that's one. That's on the agri side of things, no, for inflation. Maybe the second component is geopolitics. It's oil, the geopolitics of oil. Because the Philippines imports almost all its oil. And oil prices were volatile, especially in April. No? Because the tensions between Israel and Iran
Yeah, it's
started to
worsened.
increase
Oh,
on April 1. No? The
correct. Yes.
alleged airstrike by Israel on Syria,
Uh,
on
Iraq.
Iran's embassy in Syria that
Yeah, right.
killed, yeah,
The Iran
some of the
embassy.
top commanders of the Republican Guards of Iran. No? So some officials there, especially one top military official. So yeah, so that started it. No, although Israel, well, normally does not confirm that the airstrike came from them. No,
Of
so
course.
it started there. Then come April 13, suddenly, well, even prior to April 13, yung days after, Iran has been signaled, okay, we will retaliate. So they did retaliate. They sent 300 drones and missiles towards Israel. That's the first direct attack. So that's unprecedented, no?
Correct.
And it was foiled, 99% foiled, didn't even reach Israel.
Mm.
So through the help of the allies like US, France, UK, and so on. So they were able to foil it, no? But then Israel said, okay, we will react to that, no? We will retaliate. So April 19, allegedly, there was this drone attack in Iran. No?
Yeah.
But it was, they said the Iranian media claimed that one failed, no? Allegedly by Israel in retaliation for that April 13 unprecedented missile and drone attacks on Israel directly from Iran. So, but however, since then, since that was the last response and retaliation between the two parties, no? uh, so since April 20, more than 2 weeks after, no, at least the tensions already subsided for now. It's still uncertain. We don't know what's going to happen in the coming days. It really depends on what those two actors in the Middle East will do. No?
Middle East.
Sometimes it's really beyond everybody else's control. But
That's true.
the key takeaway there, oil prices, they were volatile last month. Like Nimex oil went up to a almost 6-month highs. No? The Nimex oil went to as high as 86 to 87. But now, it already went down by $10. That's a good thing. It already went down to around $78. Same goes with Dubai crude oil. It went to as high as $93 to $94 last month.
Yes,
the height of tensions in the Middle East. Now, it's down to $84. So, it's down by almost $10. So,
still high.
yeah, that's why, of course, volatility in oil, whenever there's geopolitical risks such as those, no, between Iran and Israel, the responses and series of retaliations between the two. So that also, because there is escalation in the region. So,
Correct.
so far, the central banks have done their job, no? Like the U.S. Federal Reserve, they have tightened interest rates for the past 2 years. Because 2 years ago, there was another war, another conflict. It's Russia-Ukraine, also involving oil, no? So that was since February 24, 2022. So during that time, we all came from the pandemic. Interest rates were at record lows. The U.S. came from U.S. interest rates, the policy rates by the Fed, close to zero. But after that, no, after the Russia-Ukraine war started, February of 2022, or more than 2 years ago, suddenly there's sharp increase in oil and other commodity prices. So inflation went up around the world. It's not just here. That's why we all felt that.
Yes.
No? Fuel pump prices suddenly went up to as high as 80, 90 pesos per liter, no? Coming from just like 50 or even less than 50 pesos per liter. So everything, there's a change in action, second round inflation effects. Transport fares went up. Other prices of fertilizer, many commodities around the world. There was volatility, no? Many commodities. It was triggered by that Russia-Ukraine war, and inflation went up. That's why suddenly the central banks from record low levels, because they came from record low
Record low.
levels to support the global economy during the time of the lockdowns. Now, inflation suddenly went up. The central banks, led by the Fed,
They have to
and
adjust.
the global central banks, they were aggressive in raising rates. So they raised rates from zero. Now it's at a 23-year high of 5.25 to 5.5%. They literally step on the brakes. The interest rates being the main tool, because if learning from the experiences in the past, especially in the 1970s, 1980s, there was a similar conflict, no, in the Middle East involving Israel and its neighboring countries. So there was geopolitics of oil. So learning from that lesson in the 70s and also in the 1980s, yeah, 70s we saw the Iranian Revolution of 1979. Iran is a major producer of oil, major supplier of oil, and also in the 80s the Iran-Iraq war followed. So oil producing countries at war. Although it's a proxy war, di ba? During that time. Well, Saddam Hussein was still, well, back then it was still an ally of the West, but before the falling out in the early 90s during the invasion of Kuwait. But before that, we saw, well, oil shock in the 70s, oil embargo. That's why worldwide it was felt, no? Because Israel back then at war with some of its neighboring countries, some of the Arab countries, some of the oil-producing countries. So suddenly there was this embargo, there was this oil shock, and you could even see in the 70s, no? You look at the history books, some of the gasoline stations in the U.S., there were signs, no gas, like that. And suddenly the big vehicles, the guzzlers, they were practically rationalized, and smaller vehicles, more fuel-efficient vehicles were used. And they don't want those kinds of scenarios to happen. That's why the world powers also, the world leaders, the U.S., some of the Western countries, European countries, they have been pushing for diplomacy as a solution. They don't want escalation to happen.
Mike, I have to cut you there because we're going for a commercial break. So we'll be getting right back to you regarding the RTL or some other issues.
And this break is brought to you by Angkas, Beat the Traffic, Bayad Center, hashtag Bigger Better Younger Bayad, and you can buy it all. Globe, atin ang mundo. Meralco, ang liwanag ng bukas. SM, we've got it all for you. Smart, live more today. Union Bank, it starts with you.
Infuse yourself with the knowledge needed to hone your business skills. Business Sense, a show where we engage with entrepreneurs, startups, and MSMEs in meaningful discussions on business growth and current marketing trends. Airs every Monday, 10 a.m., only on Daily Tribune's Facebook page and Tribune Now on YouTube. Tune in to Daily Tribune's show aimed at addressing the needs and problems of our OFWs from different corners of the globe. Hear about their plights and success stories every Tuesday and Thursday, 3 p.m. only on Daily Tribune's Facebook page and Tribune Now on YouTube. Straight Talk dives deep into pressing issues of leadership, politics, business, and more. Engage in insightful conversations with industry shakers, government leaders, and trailblazers every Wednesday at 10 a.m. only here on Daily Tribune's Facebook page and Tribune Now in YouTube.
Hi, we're back. We're still you're still with us, and or the weekly Straight Talk program. Mike, so it's a combination of El Nino and the geopolitical problems that is pushing up prices. Recently, that was yesterday, I guess. The president said that the government is considering adjusting the provisions of the rice tariffication law, which I guess one of the provisions that will be introduced is to bring back the importation authority of the National Food Authority. So how do you assess this? If this will come to pass?
Well, I think, Mr. Chito, it's learning from the good experiences in previous years.
Mm.
Well, taking that into account, when
Mm.
well, particularly the role of NFA, because the last time that there was a problem with in terms of the spike in rice prices was in 2018. That was
2018.
2018. That was 6 years ago. Yeah, that was around this time, around towards the middle of the year. Suddenly, I think the cheap price then was like 25, thereabouts, 25 pesos per kilo.
This,
And suddenly, although we have seen also some volatility in the world market back then, that was during the time of former U.S. President Trump. I think he is trying also to uh, bring back some of the sanctions on Iran, trying
yeah.
to also, well, because of the alleged breaches on the nuclear agreement on curbing its nuclear program. So there was volatility in oil. Maybe 2018 was really, well, a terrible year for inflation because all the factors that led to higher prices were there.
For that.
No?
Mm.
Yeah. Like start of that year, the train law, of course, that led to higher taxes, and of course, the geopolitics, no?
Mm-hmm.
The new sanctions on Iran. It's really reversing the easing of restrictions during the previous U.S. administration under former President Obama. So yeah, that led to some volatility in oil prices back then,
Mm-hmm.
and there were suddenly there was this lack of supply of cheap rice from the NFA rice in the market.
Mm.
In the they did act. In fairness,
Mm.
later that year, and of course shortly thereafter, you saw cheaper rice being sold in the biggest retailers around the country, the biggest
Correct.
supermarket, the biggest stores.
Mm-hmm.
There was this cheaper rice. I think it was priced like 28 pesos. Of course, it's not back to the old 25 pesos that was lacking earlier that year in 2018. But but the 28 peso rice, it was visible in the major retailers around the country. No?
These are the
Uh,
NFA rice, right?
yeah, it was there. That's why maybe that was maybe comparing it now with, of course, the laws have evolved with the rice tariffication law. So there may be a need to really rationalize it and try to bring back some of the mechanisms that indeed work. Especially, of course, it's market forces, yes, but there may be times that yeah, there may be an active role may be necessary to really ensure that the general public would also enjoy lower price rice, especially those that are, well, normally some of these cheaper rice are imported. But there were also back then, there were cheaper rice varieties coming from the rice producing provinces nearby.
Correct.
No? So, yeah, it's really a matter of empowering.
But Mike, wouldn't you see the return of NFA importation actually defeating the purpose of RTL, since it was envisioned to have the to make the market free for the traders, to have a competition in the pricing of rice.
Yeah, but it was really pointed out the rationale for reviewing the rice certification law that well, the private sector, the private traders, they bidded up the farm gate price of palay.
Yeah, right, correct.
And yeah, so everything else
But that's good
goes
for the
up.
farmers.
Higher palay prices,
Right.
outbidding, of course, other players, and of course, higher buying prices. Yeah, that may be good for farmers, yes, to higher incomes, yes. But that would also
But then
translate
there's
to
El Nino.
higher selling prices for the public. And maybe that's the element that's maybe missing compared to the previous mechanism prior to the price tariffication. No, so it's really a matter of fine-tuning it. And yeah, it maybe has been like it has been there, it has been in place since around maybe 2019 in response to the previous spike in rice prices in 2018. So yeah, maybe it's and of course it's almost a year already when we saw the previous spike in rice prices. That was like around July, August, and we saw temporary price ceilings of about a month last year in reaction to that. No? So yeah, so it's really bottom line there. It should benefit the consuming public because it was very clear. It was very clear in 2018. Cheaper rice was made available. Although, yeah, there may be a need to recalibrate the prices to reflect the recent realities, world rice prices. Yeah, back then kasi, suddenly, wala na yung mga 25 pesos per yung cheap NFA rice. Wala na. O, nung bumalik naman, yeah, to reflect the reality, syempre, may magulo yung 2018 May taas din yung ibang presyo ng bili. May konting adjustment din talaga sa bukili, not just locally, but globally. 28, pero nandun naman, nakinabang naman yung mga mamamayan natin, consumer public. Nandun doon sa mga tindahan. And it was sold there. Yun na siguro yung yun something that's more tangible and more effective supposedly. Kasi, yun ang role niya. Maring sumali siya doon. Titignan din kung maging effective yun. No? Kasi, ayun ang nitikin eh. The objective is really to, kaya nga, meron din yung EO50, di ba? Actually, yung that's already a continuation, yung reduced tariffs on imported rice.
Bigger, better, younger bayad, and you can buy it all. Globe, atin ang mundo. Meralco, ang liwanag ng bukas. SM, we've got it all for you. Smart, live more today. Union Bank, it starts with you.
Infuse yourself with the knowledge needed to hone your business skills. Business Sense, a show where we engage with entrepreneurs, startups, and MSMEs in meaningful discussions on business growth and current marketing trends. Airs every Monday, 10 a.m., only on Daily Tribune's Facebook page and Tribune Now on YouTube.
Sorry for the technical glitch, but we're back with Mr. Ricafort. So, Mike, you're talking about the 2018 episode regarding the prices of rice and the NFA role in it. So, can you continue, please?
Yeah, so maybe, because it's maybe the time has been given under the new framework, no, with the rice tariffication law that has been in place, no. Actually, this was an offshoot of that in 2018, but it was like implemented around 2019 already. No? That would effectively allow
2019.
Or more importation. Of course, rice is still kasi the Asia, ASEAN, and China, they've been under free trade regime. Almost zero import tariff since 2010. The only thing that's remaining, the sensitive commodities like rice. The import tariff remains at 35%. So if anyone would like to import rice here in the country, there's an import tax of 35%. But many other commodities already brought down to zero. This has been ongoing since 2010. It's already past 14 years. And maybe another commodity that also, although the tariff rate has been reduced, sugar. Imported sugar is around 5%.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
So that has been reduced also. So yeah, it's because it remains a mystery as well. How
A
come?
mystery.
Yeah, okay, there's greater role of market forces, supposedly, uh, allowing increased volumes of imports of rice at 35% import tariff that remains.
Mm.
So, yeah, bottom line there, would the market, under the private sector, would be more efficient to effective if there would be more competition. Yeah, that's on the importation side. Oh, and of course, there have been safeguards also, no? The wisdom of in coming up with the price verification. So, meaning it's a policy priority. In the since the previous administration also they have emphasized, okay, increase importation at lower tariffs would only happen during lean season, but during the harvest season, uh, they would they would prioritize buying from local farmers
Yeah.
and not time increase importation because it would undercut the prices being paid to the farmers, and
Correct.
it would reduce their income. So that's the key safeguard that
Ah.
in terms of a policy priority in implementing that
And
RT.
and Mike,
So yeah, go
uh,
ahead, Sir Chito.
we remain the biggest importer of rice, isn't it?
Yeah,
So we still have a great influence on the prices of the commodity, the global prices, as I may say.
yeah, one of the constraints. Because well, the global supply chain has been we have seen some disruption, especially
Mm.
over the past 2 years.
Mm.
Well, because of the geopolitical risk, no? Because during the Russia-Ukraine conflict, because Russia and Ukraine both combined, both of them, they account for around 25% of the grains market, right? Meaning,
Right.
especially rice, rather not rice. It's wheat
With
and corn. 25% of the world trade accounted for by Russia and Ukraine. So when they had the war, a conflict, so that affected the prices
prices
and also
shot
the
up.
supply chain. There was some disruption, especially, uh, yeah, some disruption in the ports. Although there were some temporary agreements to allow uh, both either countries or both countries for that matter to ship, especially because what really affected the supply chain for the poor countries that especially those in Africa and some poor countries around the world, no, that depend that on heavily imported grains like wheat. Of course,
With
wheat that's ingredient in making flour
bread
for bread
flour.
and also corn. So yeah, so it created some supply chains for the past 2 years. So that conflict because they're powerhouses around the world. They're the biggest. Imagine 1/4 of total trade of grains out of them, and that also had some indirect impact on other grains like rice, no, because of alternative consumption, alternative. Although realistically, prices have gone down already, even
Yeah.
oil. Because the central banks, they have done their job. They have tightened, they have increased interest rates, slow things down. Yeah, even if it would mean an engineered slowdown of the world economy because of high interest rates. Interest rates are at their highest in 23 years. No, in the US, from zero, more than 2 years ago, it was at zero. At the time of the lockdowns, the pandemic, March of 2022, they raised it to 5.25 to 5.5%. So, yeah, that effectively slowed down because of higher borrowing costs, higher interest
Correct.
rates. Slow
Mike,
down investment, it slow down trade. Even now,
uh,
look at the latest exports, imports data, and also if you look at the ones for the rest of the world,
came
there
out
was some
weaker.
slowdown. Also,
Oh.
manufacturing indices and other economic indicators. So, yeah, that effectively slowed down demand. And that even if, yeah, given the geopolitics, with the new one, the Israel-Hamas war started 7 months ago. That's October 7th. So there's this new geopolitical risk.
Mike,
And yeah, go ahead.
I would to ask this as my last question. Yung sa South China Sea conflict, is that less of a worry than what's happening in other parts of the world? Or do you think it would affect the sentiment here in the country?
And that's also important. That's unique to us. That's also one of the geopolitical risks. Because from the point of view of foreign investors, before they come here in the country, they invest, they pour in billions of pesos or dollars. The geopolitical risk that's unique here in the Philippines, especially the water cannon attacks
Oh,
we
yeah.
have seen just
Oo.
recently and also since late last year. So the question is, would there be a risk of conflict, a risk of miscalculation between China and the Philippines?
Mm.
Would there be a potential war?
Mm.
And yeah, that's a valid question from the point of view of foreign investors because they put in a lot of money in the country. Of course, we all know both countries are very careful to prevent.
Okay.
There's no disruption in even the trade between the two countries. But of course, that's still at the back of investors' mind because
Of course.
they want to make sure there won't be any disruption caused by any
Okay.
resulting conflict or as a result of any risk of miscalculation between the two. So, yeah.
My-
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Chito.
Yeah, unfortunately, we have to part ways. So, can I have your parting words regarding
Well,
prices or anything that you would like to say?
well, the Philippines is still among the fastest growing economies. That has been a trend
That's true.
ongoing since at least in prior to the pandemic, average growth of at least 6% from 2012 to 2019. Then even now, prospectively, just recently also, the Philippines is still among the fastest growing economies. So because we have favorable demographics, well, we have the 12th largest population of more than 113 and young, less than 25 years old, and we have achieved demographic dividend since 2015. And we're the last major economy in Asia and ASEAN to do so. No? Our neighboring countries were ahead in reaching demographic sweet spot. Now it's the time of the Philippines. Majority of the population of that more than 50 million Filipinos already working age. Imagine they have incomes, they have spending power, they will start families, they will spend, they would buy houses, vehicles, send their children to school, they will travel, and they would spend. So that's the bottom line. That's why the Philippines is, from the point of view of the biggest multinational consumer goods company, the Philippines is number 10 in the world in terms of sales because of the favorable demographics. And it's catching up. The time has come. We have seen our neighboring countries ahead. Japan was 50 years ahead. Hong Kong and Singapore, 1980. South Korea, 1985. China, 1990. Other ASEAN countries ahead by 10 to 20 years. The Philippines just started the demographic sweet spot, demographic dividend, majority of population working age since 2015. And that's expected to provide the good foundation for the country to catch up for the per capita income from about $4,000 now. If you compare that with our neighboring countries, they're like 10, 20, $30,000. So it's catching up for the Philippines coming from a low base. That's why our growth rate is much faster because of that. That's why it's very important
because of the
to
base
invest
effect.
in people.
Yeah.
Because, that's a potential. Some of the biggest global banks, they see the Philippines, the potential by 2050 to 2075, the ranking of the Philippines to increase by 20 notches. Currently, number 34 in terms of GDP. It would go up to number 15 to number 20 by 2050 to 2075. Because they have seen the potential because the huge population, provided they become more educated and productive. That's why education is the biggest equalizer. And our greatest resource remains to be our people. Because we don't have much land, we don't have much resources like oil, but our people. Why? Look at for remittances. The Philippines is number 4 in the world. The fourth largest for remittances, more than $40 billion per year after India, China, and Mexico. For a time, we even overtook Mexico more than 5 years ago. We're also in BPO in the world, we're
BPO.
number 2. It's earning more than $35 billion per year and still growing. We're number 2 after India. And for contact center, call center, we're number 1 for many. And there's still great potential for BPO to grow further, as the industry association pointed out, that BPO revenues could still grow by to as high as $50 billion in the next 5 years from. This year, the estimate is $39 billion.
39.
Whereas 20 years ago, 2004, it only started at $1 billion. And with 100,000 workers, now the number of BPO workers is close to 1.8 million,
So-
and still could increase to 2.5 million, another 700,000 BPO workers. And,
So, Mike-
and the third pillar is also
yeah.
tourism. We're catching up also on tourism, and that's why we
Tourism.
also need to, the second biggest allocation after education is consistent with our story is infrastructure to support also increase more tourist arrivals in the country to catch up with the rest of the region, earn more for tourism, so those three pillars. Of
Correct.
course, not to mention also improve data, improve labor data also. So that's gonna really catapult further the ranking of the country in the country.
So things are looking up, Mike. Thank you, Mr. Michael Ricafort. He's the chief economist of RCBC. So there we have it, mga katribu. That's our program for today. Thank you and tune in again next Wednesday for another episode of Straight Talk. I'm Chito Lozada. Watch Straight Talk live every Wednesday at 10 a.m. on Daily Tribune's Facebook page and Tribune Now on YouTube. So till next week.